All right, so we're going to talk about the new patterns of trade. So, when we talk about the new patterns of trade, we're going to first of all talk about the Columbian Exchange, which sounds like Columbus, correct? Because remember, Columbus discovered the New World. So, with the Columbian Exchange, what you need to understand is that Europe, Africa, and Asia are going to be the old world, okay? And North America and South America are going to be the new world. So, with the Columbian Exchange, you're going to have a new exchange of goods like cattle, sheep, and pigs and horses. Onions and turnips are going to go from the old world to the new world, where the new world goods that the old world has never experienced, like turkeys, peanuts, and potatoes, will be exchanged to the old world. So you just have to understand that each region or area has a different good or something that the other one is lacking. One thing I want you to make note of, though, is that do you see all these diseases here? They did not have these diseases in the New World, and so a lot of Native Americans are going to die from these diseases because they've never experienced them before. So, because of isolation, the eastern and western hemispheres had been isolated. Europeans had started to trade with Native Americans. They gave them new foods, animals, but also they gave them diseases which will hurt their population greatly. So, trade of crops began to transform the diets of people all over the world, and also diseases spreading to the Native Americans will have the most negative effect on them. They've never seen diseases like influenza, which is the flu, malaria, which can be from getting bit by a mosquito, measles, and even smallpox. So, when we talk about mercantilism, this is going to be a new thing that's going to deal with trade and wealth. And so mercantilism is the belief that a nation's wealth depends, or a nation's strength depends on its wealth. Here are the basic principles. 1, a nation's strength depends on its wealth as measured in gold and silver during this time. Okay, there is a set amount of wealth in the world, and nations have to compete for their share. So you have to, it's kind of like a survival of the fittest, but in the relations to wealth of the world. Also, a favorable balance of trade is important. You have to have a favorable balance with trade in concerning with your exports, which exports are what you send out, like what you produce, and imports are what you buy or you bring in, okay? And you have to have a favorable balance, because if you have more exports, you want more exports than imports, but if you have more imports than exports, then you have an issue. America, we have more imports than we do exports, but China has more exports than they do imports. Countries should limit imports and maximize exports, exporting of goods that you have, that you create. All right, and I just compared earlier for the United States and China. Also, a country should have its own source of raw materials, okay, such as rocks, gravel, trees, things like that. Colonies exist only as a way for the mother country to make profit. So we have colonies to benefit the mother country. In this case, like the American colonies were set up to help Britain. Okay? And then also, a country's colonies should not trade with other countries. So if England has colonies, the colonies should not trade with France. They can only trade with England. So, what's the goal of mercantilism? Well, here's the answer. To increase your own power by economically weakening your foreign competitors. So you want to be the strongest. Now, how do we create a favorable balance of trade? First of all, you have to reduce the amount of imports by taxing them. That's called a tariff. Then you sell exports at a higher price. Manufactured goods are more expensive than raw material. So, give you an example. Cutting down a tree is going to be cheaper than a wooden cabinet that's made from the tree. Countries help people to start new businesses by giving them money. These are called subsidies, okay? Countries want people to make revenue and money because then they're going to spend it more in the economy of the country. And also, a country can control overseas sources of raw materials and precious metals. Basically, it's like colonies are like the kids, and they're sending money back to mom and dad, which is the mother country. Now, capitalism. Capitalism is when private individuals control the economy and compete to make a profit. We have that in the United States. Now, colonies are going to begin to supply their mother countries with raw materials, and then the mother country would manufacture a good and sell it for a higher price. Let me give you an example. Starts out like this in America. It is shipped, and then it ends up like this in England. Okay? Which one's more expensive, the cabinet or the tree? It's going to be the cabinet. All right, so joint stock companies. When we talk about joint stock companies, what you need to understand is that individual investors are going to pool together their money. So if I create a donut company, instead of me having just one person invest $1 million in my company, I might get 5 people to chip in and create the whole $1 million that I need. So investors buy shares in a company. Then if it's profitable, each shareholder receives a % of the profit from the company. And if unprofitable, each shareholder only uses or loses a small amount of what they invested. So that is new patterns of trade.